Well, yes, Krishnan, this was the final episode, if you like, in this season of the January 6th insurrection. There's more to come, we're told, in September. And it was nearly 3 hours of shocking evidence, including the harrowing testimony that Mike Pence, the vice president's security detail, they were so scared for their lives at one point, they called their loved ones to say goodbye. All the while, inside the White House, there was a desperate scramble to make Donald Trump call the rioters off. But he, as we know, refused. Instead, he sat at his dining table and watched the events unfold on Fox News, seemingly unperturbed. But the question is doing nothing a crime? Certainly, the committee believes that it has amassed enough evidence for the Department of Justice to charge Donald Trump, but it's not at all clear that they will do so. Perhaps the best that the committee can hope for is that this constant stream of revelations will persuade the voting public never to trust Donald Trump to hold office again.
Okay, I'll do this. I'm going to do this. Let's go. But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
These never-before-seen outtakes are Donald Trump, the day after the January the 6th insurrection. Despite knowing 4 people had died, hundreds of police officers were injured, and with the nation and the world reeling in disbelief, the former president still couldn't bring himself to concede that the election was over. The footage was obtained by the committee investigating the events of that day, in a primetime hearing designed to leave no doubt that while the Capitol burned, Donald Trump sat in the White House watching the violence unfold on TV and over 3 hours refused to publicly condemn it or make a single call to law enforcement to stop it.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States that day?
No.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Homeland Security that day?
I'm not aware of that, no.
If the president had wanted to make a statement and address the American people, he could have been on camera almost instantly.
Instead, it was Mike Pence, the vice president, who made desperate calls to the military, even as new audio from an anonymous White House source revealed the sheer terror among Pence's staff.
The members of the VP detail at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. I'm like talking about it, but there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth.
The second floor, moving in now.
And you can hear the fear in their voices as the Secret Service desperately tried to get Pence to safety just minutes after Trump had tweeted his vice president was a coward and rioters were calling for him to be hanged. The same rioters that the pro-Trump Senator Josh Hawley had encouraged with a raised fist earlier in the day, only to be shown in slow motion fleeing from the Capitol to save himself as they descended. Both witnesses said Trump's inaction that night left them with no choice but to immediately resign.
I simply didn't want to be associated with the events that were unfolding on the Capitol.
His refusal to act and call off the mob that day and his refusal to condemn the violence was indefensible.
When he was eventually persuaded to tweet a video over 3 hours later,
We have to have peace.
the committee played footage to prove Trump's words had immediate effect.
I'm here delivering the president's message. Donald Trump has asked everybody to go home.
Their point that had he called them off earlier, the deadly violence could have been avoided.
The mob was accomplishing President Trump's purpose, so of course he didn't intervene. President Trump did not fail to act during the 187 minutes between leaving the ellipse and telling the mob to go home. He chose not to act.
That Trump chose not to act was made abundantly clear last night. It will be up to prosecutors to decide if his actions were criminal and for voters to decide if they can ever trust Donald Trump again.
Well, with those hearings revealing more damning details, the question is whether any of this is having an effect on Republican voters. With the party hoping to win big in November's elections, there is a concern that Donald Trump might now have too much political baggage and could even be an unnecessary distraction. Our reporter Kieran Moodley has been speaking to senior Republican figures, and a warning: his report contains flashing images from the start.
January 6th, 2021, when America's capital was overrun by conspiracists.
Requesting additional resources on the east side as they've broken into that window.
When its representatives were chased out by rioters. But what led up to all of this, and who allowed it to happen?
The crowd was unbelievable. The love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
Where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, you know, I don't even care that they have weapons.
And aware of the rioters' chance to hang Mike Pence, the president responded, Mike Pence, quote, deserves it.
The committee has said the answer is clear. Donald Trump's lies incited the insurrection.
But what do Republican voters make of these hearings? Because the party is favored to take the House, perhaps even the Senate, this November. So are these hearings making no impact whatsoever on an already divided nation? Or are they maybe chipping away at Donald Trump's popularity?
Bob Corker, Lamar Alexander.
Whit Ayres has worked with Republican candidates for more than 30 years and says the party's voters are now split into three groups.
The smallest faction are the never Trump people, about 10%. The second group are the always Trump voters, about 30%. The third and the largest group are maybe Trump voters, about 60% of the electorate. There are a lot of revelations that are coming out of these hearings that are so hard to believe that they will affect people's views of whether Trump is a viable candidate in 2024.
But that's not the view of senior Republicans in Congress.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think there are very many people in the country that are keeping up with January 6th. I think the people that are keeping up with January 6th are the ones that actually despise Donald Trump, and this is therapy for them.
You've seen the evidence that he was told constantly by his family, by all of those around him, by election officials,
I haven't
that
seen
the election was free and
evidence.
that the election was free and fair, and yet he still encouraged people to go on January 6th to complain about an election, which you yourself said was free and fair.
He encouraged people to protest, but I don't think anyone would have foreseen the protest getting out of hand. That's what I've said all along. I think it was a protest that went bad, which happens if you have it in ball games.
But while many Republicans think January the 6th was a legitimate protest, the idea that the election was stolen is more a fringe issue pushed by extreme candidates, like in Arizona.
I'd actually like to ask everybody on this stage if they would agree we had a corrupt, stolen election. Raise your hand.
And that could cost Republicans come November.
In the last 12 years, the Republicans have left at least a half a dozen Senate seats on the table by nominating candidates who could not be competitive in the general election.
And Republicans also seem worried by reports that Trump might announce his candidacy before this year's elections.
I hope that the focus is on the House and the Senate.
You think he'd be a distraction?
He's always going to get a lot of media attention, right?
But would he mobilize voters and help you win the House?
I think we're in pretty good shape. I think everything's going in the right directions.
And for the Democrats, these hearings could have a hidden snag, that by taking out Trump, they lose the enemy who gets out their voters.
It may very well be that the hearings will lead to a stronger Republican nominee in 2024 than Donald Trump would have been.
And what does that look like policy-wise?
It means tipping your hat to some of the Trump agenda, talking about the importance of parental involvement in schools, stopping woke policies.
That platform is used by Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, Trump's biggest rival. But the focus for now is November, and if Republicans win, they'll have their own investigations, starting with Joe Biden's son.
We'll have Hunter Biden investigations next year, right? The problem is Hunter Biden's business dealing? Are they compromising Joe Biden? And that's part of what we're going to look into, because he is a national security threat.
And he's more of a national security threat than Donald Trump and what happened on January 6th?
Yes.
That's the conclusion from these hearings. America is split into two sides having very different conversations. one that sees that day as the worst of America, while the other side just wants to move on.